Have you ever paused in the middle of a perfectly ordinary day and felt a shiver at the thought of how easily kindness can be undone? Picture someone who radiates warmth and compassion, the sort of person you would trust implicitly. And then imagine a gradual transformation, one imperceptible step at a time, until that once trusted individual commits an act so harmful it shocks everyone who knows them. At first glance, it's tempting to label such a shift a rare anomaly, but countless historical records and scientific studies indicate a different reality. The line that separates goodness from cruelty can be perilously thin, and nearly anyone can be guided, pressured, or lured across it. In examining the phenomenon often referred to as the Lucifer effect, one finds unsettling evidence that good people can and do participate in harmful actions, sometimes without fully understanding how they came to abandon their moral compasses. The environment in which we operate, the instructions we receive from authority figures, and the social roles we reassigned can all subtly rewrite our sense of what is acceptable. We have learned from grim chapters in history, from acts of genocide to the silent complicity of bystanders, that ordinary individuals can be manipulated or coerced into behaviors they would ordinarily condemn. Even as these truths feel uncomfortable, they offer a powerful lens into human nature, showing that while everyone has the capacity for compassion, each person also possesses the potential for harm. Consider well-known psychological experiments that highlight these vulnerabilities. Stanley Milgram. Obedience studies demonstrated how readily people would administer painful electric shocks to strangers when prompted by an authority figure. Many participants discovered their personal boundaries crumbling once they were assured that the experiment requires you to continue, revealing how even mild social pressure can override empathy. Meanwhile, in Philip Zimbardo's Stanford prison experiment, students were arbitrarily assigned the roles of guards or prisoners, and the guards rapidly embraced abusive tactics, demonstrating how roles and situational factors can drive startling changes in behavior. These experiments force us to recognize that moral collapse isn't always about a sudden dramatic shift. Sometimes it's a series of small, almost invisible steps that begin with rationalizations or the need to avoid conflict. Looking back through history, one finds innumerable accounts that mirror these experiments on a grander scale. Entire populations have been mobilized into committing atrocities under charismatic leaders who exploit fear or prejudice. In each case, many of the participants did not think of themselves as evil. Often, they saw themselves as loyal soldiers, obedient citizens, or people trying to protect their own families. Through propaganda, dehumanizing language, and directives from figures of authority, oppression can be painted as duty, and violence can be reframed as a necessity. Yet, if these forces were unstoppable, there would be little hope for positive change. The truth is that while the Lucifer effect highlights the frailties of human morality, it also underscores our ability to resist. The same capacity for empathy and reason that allows us to form communities can also become our greatest armor against moral decay. Every day, subtle cues influence us, from what we see in our social media feeds to what we overhear in workplace chatter. If we aren't mindful, these influences can normalize slights, microaggressions, or casual misdeeds. Over time, such behaviors add up, leading an individual to slip further from their core values. But awareness of this progression is the foundation of prevention. By regularly reflecting on our moral choices, we begin to notice the smaller acts of wrongdoing and stand a better chance of halting an insidious spiral before it starts. When we feel ourselves tempted to rationalize harm or stay quiet in the face of injustice, we can remember that these minor compromises often mark the beginning of a deeper moral unraveling. Yet a crucial question remains. Are some people naturally exempt from such pitfalls? Is there a personality type that will never succumb to these pressures? Psychological discourse suggests that while certain traits, like high empathy or strong moral conviction, can act as deterrents, no one is entirely invulnerable. Even the most principled individuals can be swayed by social forces if conditions align in the worst way. The self-awareness to admit that we are all capable of erring becomes a key element of moral fortification. When we acknowledge our vulnerabilities, we are more likely to guard against them, to question seemingly harmless instructions, and to push back when group norms encourage damaging actions. This human duality, the coexistence of altruism and destructiveness within the same person, has long been recognized in art, religion, and philosophy. The Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung referred to it as the shadow, a part of ourselves we suppress or deny. Accepting the shadow doesn't mean giving in to our darkest impulses, but rather recognizing that they exist. Awareness allows us to minimize the risk of stumbling blindly into harmful deeds. By understanding that we, too, carry a piece of darkness within us, we can stay vigilant against situations that might amplify it. When we turn our gaze to moral disengagement, an idea presented by psychologist Albert Bandura, we see how people distance themselves from the ethical implications of their actions. Someone might claim everyone else is doing it to downplay cheating, or the ends justify the means to rationalize mistreatment. By reframing harmful behavior, individuals create psychological comfort that frees them from guilt. This process can be dangerously subtle. A quick justification for a questionable choice can start a chain reaction. It's therefore crucial to pause and ask, am I simply making excuses? Or would I normally defend such behavior if I saw someone else doing it? Empathy serves as a potent countermeasure to this mental sleight of hand. By striving to see others as full, multidimensional human beings, people who feel joy, fear, and sorrow as we do, we make it more difficult to ignore their suffering. This is why labels and stereotypes are so potent. They strip people of individuality, making it easier to disregard their emotional realities. From social media spats to global conflicts, whenever an opponent or outgroup is framed as less human, empathy is severed and a gateway to cruelty opens. Restoring that sense of shared humanity through conversation, storytelling, or common causes can often mend fractured relationships and forestall cruelty. But knowledge alone may not suffice to keep us from slipping into a moral abyss. The presence of moral courage, the determination to speak or act ethically, even at personal risk, is equally vital. Many of the heroic acts throughout history involved those who dared to defy social pressures, whether it was Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat or individuals sheltering persecuted minorities. Even in everyday scenarios, moral courage can manifest in small but meaningful ways, such as calling out casual bigotry or refusing to follow an unethical directive at work. Every time someone exercises moral courage, they reaffirm the principle that right and wrong matter more than convenience or social acceptance. Yet moral courage doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's often nurtured by a supportive environment. Surrounding yourself with people who share your values and convictions can reinforce your resolve when it's tested. Likewise, being that supportive voice for others strengthens the shared moral fabric of a community or organization. Positive role models, whether historical figures or personal acquaintances, can galvanize a person's determination not to yield to toxic norms. By witnessing someone else's principled stand, we can more readily picture ourselves doing the same. None of this is purely academic. We frequently encounter shades of the Lucifer effect in routine life, a co-worker being belittled in meetings, a friend spouting hateful rhetoric, or a team project that drifts toward ethically murky territory. In these moments, the influences of authority, groupthink, and fear of ostracism can be formidable. This is precisely where self-reflection and situational awareness come into play. When we slow down to scrutinize these situations, we're less prone to automatic compliance or silent complicity. We become mindful of the potential long-term ramifications of brief moral compromises. And in recognizing those ramifications, we empower ourselves to choose differently. No single method guarantees immunity. However, an amalgamation of self-knowledge, empathy, moral courage, and reflective practices can drastically reduce the likelihood of descending into complicity. While it might seem onerous always to question norms or stand against the crowd, the cost of not doing so can be high, not just for ourselves, but for our communities. When we fail to engage our moral agency, we risk ceding it to forces that do not have the well-being of all in mind. This is why discussions about leadership and societal structures are so important. Charismatic leaders have the power to elevate entire communities toward compassion and justice, or drive them into xenophobia and violence. But leaders are not the only ones with influence. Each of us in our spheres, whether that's within our families, friend groups, or workplaces, exercises a kind of micro-leadership through our example. By modeling empathy, honesty, and moral consistency, we contribute to an environment where destructive forces hold less sway. When we explore how a single person's actions ripple out to affect countless lives, we recognize how profound this influence can be. A seemingly small decision to offer kindness or stand up for a marginalized individual can set off a chain reaction that changes an entire community's outlook. Conversely, a decision to remain silent in the face of escalating abuse can embolden perpetrators. Acknowledging this interconnection motivates us to remain vigilant, because what we do or don't do matters far more than we might assume. Yet vigilance can be draining. That's why resilience is indispensable. Finding healthy ways to cope with stress, bolstering our emotional support systems, and practicing forgiveness for ourselves and others all help us navigate the moral complexities we face. In a culture that often prizes competition and individual success, deliberately nurturing compassion, both inwardly and outwardly, runs counter to the idea that caring is a weakness. On the contrary, empathy is a strength that prevents us from succumbing to indifference or cruelty. Moments of personal failure will still happen. We may find ourselves succumbing to peer pressure or acting out of anger. Recognizing these failings and doing the work to correct them is crucial. Rather than wallowing in guilt, it's possible to use such moments as lessons, forging a deeper commitment to acting ethically the next time. One of the most powerful things about human beings is our capacity for self-correction. That same flexibility that makes us vulnerable to negative influence also grants us the ability to learn and recover from mistakes. In the broader scheme of human history, cycles of violence and division have recurred, yet so have episodes of profound reconciliation, cooperation, and social progress. Time and again, people have come together to dismantle harmful systems, push back against corrupt leaders, and extend empathy to once hostile groups. These successes highlight the possibility that we are not doomed to a perpetual repetition of cruelty. By internalizing lessons from experiments like Milgram's or Zimbardo's, and studying the factors that lead to moral failings, we become better equipped to foster ethical vigilance in ourselves and those around us. All this prompts deeper self-inquiry. When confronted with moral conflict, will I recognize the warning signs? Will I see that line before I cross it? Or will I only notice once I've gone too far? By deliberately posing such questions, we prepare ourselves mentally. We rehearse moral dilemmas in our minds, and when reality presents them, we respond with clearer eyes and steadier resolve. In the end, the core message woven through these observations is that our shared humanity unites us, even when circumstances try to split us into us and them. Acknowledging that each of us balances potential goodness with latent darkness helps us remain humble about our judgments and vigilant about our actions. In that balance lies the potential for either harm or healing, a reminder that while the Lucifer effect may be an inherent risk in human social life, our capacity to resist it is equally strong.